point for our work on the Energy Commission and for our talk today is, of course, what we learned from Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, which tells us, this is not the first slide, no, you should have one slide before, right, which tells us that in order to avoid the worst consequences of global warming, by 2050 we must eliminate almost all uses of fossil fuel and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to about zero. So in the beginning of our work, we ask ourselves the question, is it feasible for Newton to meet that goal? And what would it take? And how do we translate what it would take to some specific steps, policies, incentives, and so on, so that Newton could do that? And as you see on the next slide, so here is the question, is it feasible? And the answer is yes. Yes is right under this. Okay, on my slide it says yes. We spent those 6 months studying Newton, studying our housing sector, our transportation sector, our commercial sectors, its state of being, its changes over time as best as we could understand, our demographics, technology. If this work was performed even 6-7 years ago, it would be much more difficult to say yes. But technology is really working to our advantage. So this is what we did, and we said yes, though it is not always going to be so simple. So here we are on the next slide. This is Newton. 92,000 people, about 30,000 households, of which 25,000 are homes and 5,000 are apartments, 57,000 cars, and 1.5 million square feet of commercial space. We use almost 99% of all energy we use in these areas are fossil fuels. So this is where we are, and for those of us who have been concerned about global warming, environment, and feeling we should be doing something, this is where business as usual has taken us. On the next slide, right, here is Newton between 2019 and 2050. We are going to spend more than $30 billion on the following: on building new homes, not so many, about 4,000, new apartments, about 2,000-3,000. We will buy 150,000 new cars, and we will buy 500 million gallons of gasoline and buy 1,240 tera-BTUs of energy for residential heating. Thank you. So if we don't do anything, this is what we're going to do over the next 30 years. All right? Continue investing in these technologies and in these fossil fuels. All right. On the next slide, okay, this is the statement we're making is, we can reach the IPCC goals if we invest and spend this money in a different way, strategically. And that's what this climate action plan is all about, is to explain how to do it. So this is based on all our analysis and modeling, which took, just producing these 2 graphs is an enormous amount of data that goes in it. We have concluded that in the residential sector, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions down to 0 in 2050. The higher graph is business as usual if we don't exert ourselves in that direction. This is for transportation sector, where shift towards electric car is going to be the biggest greenhouse impact, which is not the same as cultural change in Newton, but I'll come to it, that we can also get to 2050. Okay, so our long-term strategy is as follows. As you see, these three sectors. By the way, the plan did not look at the municipal sector operations because they represent only 3% of total in Newton, and they are in very good hands with Bill Ferguson and other people in the city. They've been working towards energy efficiency and solar installation. It's the residential sector, both buildings and the way we move, and commercial sectors that has not been addressed. So this is what we focus. So this is what we plan to do, or Newton needs to plan to do, is to reduce the energy demand by 20% in the buildings, energy efficiency in the buildings. And the main way to do it is twofold. One is all new construction would have to meet the passive house standards. I'll get to passive house in a moment. It's a very highly performing construction, which uses, if you build two buildings next to each other, one according to the current building code and the other one according to passive house standard, the one in the passive house is going to use 80% less energy for heating and cooling. So it's a tremendously different kind of construction. In existing homes, which is most of the homes that we have right now will be still here in 2050. About 80% of them. What we need is to retrofit these houses. Retrofits means weatherize them, improve their energy efficiency. And by these two, we will reduce energy consumption, energy demand by 20%. In the transportation sector, we are estimating that we can get to about 15, maybe 20% reduction in vehicle travel miles, how many miles we travel. So that's really efficiency approach, right? What you don't achieve through efficiency approach needs to be all electrified, and renewable electricity needs to be used as a source of this electricity, which means 100% class 1 New England renewables. Power choice now gives us 60%. We should all move, and eventually the city should move. We estimate by 2030 that the city will be buying for everybody 100% renewable. All right? But that will require a push. Nothing happens by itself, right? And in the commercial sectors, we have a somewhat different approach that to bring the biggest employers and owners of the largest square footage space together into so-called Green Ribbon Commission and challenge them to produce their own climate action plan. Right? And that will cover about 50% of all commercial sector. Let's continue. All right? When we did our research, we discovered many opportunities and leverage points to accomplish it. Look, for example, 100 homes, maybe 107 is the exact number, are torn down every year in Newton and replaced with new ones. All right? Every one of those tear downs, as they're being called, may be is an opportunity to build a passive house in its place. There are several large developments in the works. Whether they will get their final permits or not is still, we have a way to go. There are proponents, there are opponents. I'm talking about Northland, Riverside, the Washington Street reimagining, and so on. This is all one gigantic opportunity to build to the passive house standard. We change about 700 heating units, heating systems every year. Every time this heating unit has to be replaced, this is an opportunity for an electrical heat pump rather than the usual gas-powered heating system. Maybe there will be time more to explain the electric heating unit. This is a new technology, extremely efficient, and it has no relationship with electric heating that some of us remember from the 70s, which was extremely inefficient. Actually, it was its inefficiency that created the heat. All right? It was so inefficient that would heat up, and that's what created the heat. This is an entirely different technology. Okay, so don't panic if you remember those days. Okay, all right. Energy retrofits are extremely highly subsidized through the Mass Save. Right? Not only they subsidize, if you decide to blow insulation into your house, it's easy, it's not disruptive. 3/4 of it are paid by the subsidies. I don't know why everybody has not done it yet. And you save anywhere between 8 and 25% on your heating bills, depending how bad you started from. All right? 650 homes are sold in Newton every year. Every time a home changes hands, it's an opportunity to disclose the energy performance of that house and link the price of the house to its energy performance, right? Because increasingly the buyers are asking about energy performance, right? 25% Newton residents are over 65, which means these tear downs, the rate of them may speed up, and the changes in ownership may speed up that rate as older people want to, what's the word? Downsize, thank you, right? The growing road congestion clearly calls for reducing miles traveled. The employers who want to develop their own plans, 31 major employers own 50% of all commercial space, which tells you we can work individually with these employers. Right? And half of the problem will be covered. And in Newton, we buy on average cars every 9 years. Every time you buy a new car, it's an opportunity to buy an electric car. So in 30 years, 30 divided by 9, it's more than 4 times. More than 4 times the entire fleet in Newton will be replaced. 3. Oh, yeah, I was thinking 45, right. Yeah, close enough, all right. 3.5 times we will replace our fleet. Think about all the opportunities to change to a different technology. So let's talk in more detail about the residential sector. All right, so here is the economics, because if people want to know the economics of new construction, okay? You see on the left, a house that is typical house now. Okay, so a new house is being built, something was torn down. It's what they're building now is this more than 4,000 square foot house at $10 million. All right, this is what's being built now. 2 million. What did I say? 10. In a few years, you'll be 10, right? Okay, so so land is very expensive. So let's look at the construction. Construction cost is $700,000. Annual heating cost, if you spread it from year 2020 to 2050, the total cost is going to be about $760,000 of the structure itself and heating it, right? And this is how many pounds of greenhouse gases it will emit. Now passive house next to it, the same construction, everything. Construction cost maybe 5% graded, 735. Annual heating cost, 825, much lower, right? At the end of the 30 years, you spend exactly the same amount on each of the houses to build and to heat it for 30 years, but 0 greenhouse gases have been emitted from the heat.
But those costs are attributed to different people, so how do you get the builders to be incentivized to do something that's going to cost more for somebody to acquire it when they're not going to see those whole savings? How do you...
No, I assume that this cost, the 5% greater cost, is going to be passed to the new homeowner.
Right, but why are they going to pay more when they're not going to see those savings? Because everyone has sort of their short-term interest, right? They're going to own the house for 5 years.
They will see if they don't think short-term, right?
Right, if people think short-term generally.
Well, we do know that people are looking at HERS ratings. They're now asking for HERS ratings in terms of buying a home. So there must clearly be longer-term incentives than would be suggested by just merely the cost of the house. People are now thinking about the long-term operating cost of the house.
Okay.
And that's what.
If we put that in the listings, that's...
But, okay, only 5 years ago, building a passive house had a premium of somewhere around 15–20%. Now it's about 5%. Within a very short time, there will be no difference in the cost of building the house between the regular house and the passive house. Right? And the passive house is a great place to live because what makes passive house? It's extremely high quality construction. That's what it's about. Right? So let's continue. All right, so here is the retrofits. Here is the economics of residential retrofits. And once again, now this slide was prepared by my colleague, Jonathan Klein. So what we see here, the problem with housing in Newton is about 90%, 95% of it has been built before 1970, all right? It's a lot of leaky, poorly insulated, low quality from the energy perspective houses. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh. Yeah.
Go to the building slide.
Maybe you can just, yeah, okay.
Keep the cursor in the middle.
All right, so in essence, right now, most houses in Newton have HERS rating. Should I take a break? No. Okay, so HERS rating, HERS, is a measure of energy performance of the envelope of the building. All right? So right now, under the current building code, the typical house will have a HERS rating around 60–55. All right? Most houses in Newton, those houses built before 70, will have HERS rating of about 125. The lower, the better. All right? Low HERS rating means better performance. The least efficient houses, those beautiful old Victorian houses we love so much, could easily have a HERS rating of 175.
Just interrupt for one moment. If some things are hard to see or there's so much information that's hard to take in, we're planning on putting this slide presentation accessible from the minutes of the meeting.
Yeah.
So everybody who's signed in will get that.
Go faster. Faster. Okay. All right. I am being told that I take too much time. Okay, let's move to the next slide. This is essentially estimating how much you can save by retrofitting, by upgrading the house and putting heat pump. Okay, more about residential. This is what we very specifically recommend, all right? Recommendation, transition to make a requirement that all new construction is passive house in Newton. City Council would have to weigh on that. Create energy concierge service. That is going to be a service to help citizens choose the right heating systems, to choose the right, not just citizens, but also contractors, to ease that transition to a much better performing house. right? Yesterday, the council voted unanimously. It was extraordinary to create this service. It still requires the mayor's approval, but we really, it was an extraordinary vote, unanimously, all right? Publish HERS rating for all properties started with points of sale. In other words, everybody's HERS rating is going to be published in assessor's database as an incentive, right? And we also are talking about a tax system that would reward houses with very high energy performance. But this is still not fully developed, so I'm not going to get into the details. But you can see here powerful incentives that would work in residential. Okay, transportation is in some ways simple. The economics of transition to electric cars is very straightforward at this point. The technology is improving. The cost is falling down. The interest in electric cars is increasing. Forecasts are very promising. The distance they can travel is getting longer. So what we need is to just take that step, right? Next time you buy a house, consider electric car. Excuse me? Oh, yeah, right.
Kind of car. Basically buy a car. Consider it.
What did I say? Well, you know what I mean. Because I am jumping to the next topic as I'm
Make sure
speaking.
the house is a 240 volt.
Yeah, right. Of course, we will have to, yeah.
Not true. You don't need 220 service to charge your electric car.
You don't. It just takes very long. Right? With a regular plug. If you have one in your garage, you just plug it in. Right? So you can see, and looking at the prices and looking at the emission, you see that overall, because maintenance is much less expensive for electric cars, fuel is much less expensive. Over a 10-year period, on a Nissan Leaf, you're going to spend $31,000, and on Honda Civic, similar in size, you will spend $39,000, right? And emissions speak for themselves. All right. Transportations, these are the recommendations we are making. Conduct citywide marketing campaign for electric cars. Assure availability of charging stations. Those who live in apartment buildings will need special provisions. We are already beginning to work on it. There will be parking spaces at all municipal lots that will say only fully electric cars can park here. Right? You want to park there? You know what to do.
Will there be charging stations there too?
Some will have, not all of those spaces, but we are developing charging stations too. All right? Expand the new transportation system for seniors, which is now, it's a minivan. This will have to be worked through the economics of it, expanding it to all citizens. And of course, we have to improve public transit, infrastructure for bicycles, and how we use the land. If we continue spreading, building all the businesses and homes as single-story structures, we will never solve the problem of public transportation. For that, we do need to go up and increase density of people. Otherwise, public transit is just so uneconomical that it cannot be kept. Okay, commercial sectors, very quickly. I already said. Yeah.
Did you consider bicycles at all?
Yeah, I said infrastructure. We absolutely must develop infrastructure for bicycles. All right, today, how many of you bike today? What a day for biking. Okay, great, right? Pleasant. All right. Okay, so the recommendations are again for the commercial sector to publish HERS rating, to create Green Ribbon Commission, where the mayor will use it as a bully pulpit to get these businesses to do their own plans, and work, of course, with state and utilities. Utilities have resources and a know-how, and we are trying to develop actually a memorandum of understanding with them. Okay, so this is a long-term plan. What do we need to do now, right now? And here is where we begin, all right? Some things have to be done by city council, some things have to be done by the mayor and the administration, okay? So require that all construction is passive house, city council. Require that HERS rating is measured and disclosed publicly, that's the council. Pass ordinance requiring that anytime your heating system is replaced, you are given an explained electric option, including its cost benefit. That's for the council. The mayor, preferential parking, that's mayor's job. The marketing campaign for EVs, that should come from the mayor. Establish partnership with Eversource and EnGrid. Mayor is very interested already in it. We're working on the text of it. And the Green Ribbon Commission, as I mentioned. And there are a couple that require collaboration. Setting up energy concierge and fund it. The council is interested in establishing, but it has to be funded through the mayor's budget, right? And transportation plans for new developments that meet CAP goals. These proposals that come from Northland and for the Riverside and so on require both approval by the administration and by the council. They need to meet the goals of this plan, and both these bodies have to work together. Okay, so what did I say, essentially? What I said is this. The city council, the mayor, have to remove the barriers, provide guidance, provide help, provide incentives, provide education. All right? This is their job. But the actual job of upgrading the housing, switching to electric heat, switching to electric cars, driving less, that's us. And this is where the big change is taking place now. Until now, we've been talking about reducing energy consumption in schools, public buildings, and everybody was in favor, or putting solar installation, many were in favor, there was some opposition. It was always for somebody else to do something. Now that somebody else is us. And that's where the big challenge is. Thank you.
We have some time for some.
Yes, I'll be glad to.
Just a heads up, guys, that after this, there are 3 very knowledgeable people who will be leading our panel discussion, who will answer a lot of questions about sort of
Right.
passive house and.
Right, more technical
So,
questions,
exactly. So
yeah.
we'll have another opportunity
Yeah.
to get into the weeds.
So,
a bit
yeah.
more. But about the presentation as a whole. Yeah.
Please.
It's not very often that I'm one of the younger people in a room. How are we going to get the younger people involved in this? I mean, to me, that's just, look at us, we're all gray.
May I respond to that, please?
Yes.
I'm Marsha Cooper from Green Newton, and Green Newton and 350 and Mothers Out Front are closely collaborating, and they have so much schoolwork that they couldn't be here tonight. But I have been in conversations with them. There's groups from the 2 high schools, middle schools, even the elementary schools. On Friday afternoon, there's a program at Newton North called SUSFest, Sustainable. And so there's actually a lot going on behind the scenes. I've been in communication with a bunch of kids from both schools, a lot of interest. And as a matter of fact, we're giving them information about testifying at the State House when bills come up. So things like that. They're very engaged. And also Peter Barrer has organized by ward advocacy with our city council, and so we're going to be bringing students into that too. One of the reasons that the 17 new solar panels passed is the student advocacy on that. So while we don't see them here tonight, I think they're here in spirit.
Quick mention, if you've ever gone to a Green New Deal rally, all those are young and they don't have any old people. So there's, maybe it's sort of combining the two.
You need to combine because rallies are very important, but rallies are different from looking at the nuts and bolts. This is what we must do. And you are right, we need to reach parents through children. But, these are evening meetings. People with young families have difficulty coming to these meetings, but it doesn't mean that they are not interested. We just need those incentives, and we need to reach out, right?
May I say something?
Yes.
I'd like to invite you all Thursday across the river to the Needham Senior Center, the CAT, Center at the Heights, where high school students from the 4 environmental studies classes at Needham High School will be presenting their final projects for a grade to the audience, which will attend at 6 o'clock Thursday at the CAT. I invite you all to come.
Where is it?
The CAT is the Center at the Heights, 300 Hillside Avenue, Needham, Massachusetts.
But also there has to be some education going on, that striving for sustainability is more than recycling. We have been very well successfully educated to recycle, and recycling has many benefits, so that's fine. But as far as greenhouse gas emissions, recycling has minimal, if any, impact. All right? So we need to start looking around where we live, look around your home, and start thinking, what is our footprint? What is our carbon footprint in our everyday life?
In transportation, most of the cars and roads are heavily subsidized. And did you look at sort of all the subsidies that the town and the cities provide for parking and for other things? Because they're not paying the fair share. So if that was sort of paid more, then you're going to drive less. But unless you actually recognize those subsidies, they all just get hidden. And the only subsidies we see is for mass transit rather than all the subsidies that much, much greater for cars.
Yes. There is a group of, there is an advisory group on transportation that calls, among others, for charging for parking its real cost. You know, what we pay to the meter, all right? But there are things that have to be done in stages, because we can, it's one thing to say we don't want people to drive so much, but another thing is to provide alternatives. You cannot do the sticks without carrots, cannot do carrots without sticks. So that requires, so I totally agree, but at the same time, we have to account for a phase-in.
Does anyone know, in terms of big building projects, we've got a huge amount going on right here on Washington Street and up in Walnut.
Yeah.
If Corf, is he going to hit these new efficiency things? I mean, he's going to be putting thousands of units, if you look at his plans. And
Yes.
So
he's going to be asked. There is a lot of activity going on around this question, a lot of buzz, all right? The goal is that Corf will be asked to build passive house. All this construction, passive house and electrically heated.
can the ask be done, firmly enough to get a good response? Maybe. I think so. Maybe.
Yeah, the hope is.
But the council can require it as a special permit.
Yeah. You see, Newton cannot change our building code and simply rewrite the rules and say all the construction has to be passive house, because that power is with the state, right? But any project that requires special permit, we do have that leverage. So the green community on every level has been already working on that in regard to Northland, to Corf, to the Washington Street corridor. That is the construction of the future. You know, build in 21st century using 20th century technology for buildings that will be still here in 22nd century. What sense does that make? Right?
Zero.
You know, yes.
How much was the potential savings on emissions that you had in one of the slides? I didn't write it down. Do you remember how much was? On one of your slides you said you had the potential savings on CO2 emissions.
Well, there were several of them that had it.
How many pounds? Total.
Total, I don't remember it. I have no control. I'll get you this PowerPoint.
but-
Yeah. Or do you have a point?
Okay,
Yeah.
my point is, I just was maybe it was no more than maybe 100,000 pounds.
Okay.
The total emissions in the world is 35 billion pounds of CO2. 35 billion pounds. And they increase them by 6 billion per year. So I think the things that we're doing here is great, but it's nothing. We're not going to resolve anything, even if Newton accomplishes all this.
This is a common observation.
Yeah.
And it seems very logical.
And-
On the other hand, it's no different. This observation is no different than saying I'm not going to go and
No,
vote
but I think we
because
used to-
my one vote will make no
No,
difference.
but the approach is that the fuel industry is spending in 2012, they spent $675 billion in new developments and the
Yeah.
resources.
Okay, so let's.
If they get half of that, there's no way that we're going to accomplish what we want to do.
We need
They have
to
stop
act.
doing that.
We need to act on a federal level, state level, and the city level. And each should do where their power is the most effective.
Yeah, but in the plan, there is
So-
nothing.
That is not, we vote as citizens and we try mightily to affect Washington, right? We haven't done it on this round, but that doesn't mean we won't do it in the next round.
the first point.
The state has the power to change building code. So we're going to lobby with the state to change the